Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. My name is Jamie McLeod. I am the Assistant Technical Director for North Carolina Youth Soccer. Really excited about our guest today, Matt Booth. Matt and I first met this past summer at the Way of Champions Leadership Retreat, where we spent 4 days on a personal coaching journey. We dug into who we are as coaches and leaders, and during that time, Matt gave a truly inspiring presentation that has stuck with me, which is why I've invited him here today to share with all of you his insights on what it really means to lead beyond the title and how we can take our values and beliefs and put them into action in our work. As coaches and leaders in the youth soccer community, we're not just responsible for teaching children how to play the game, we're also role models and mentors who have a profound impact on their lives. I know that Matt's message has the potential to inspire and empower us to be even more effective leaders and make a positive difference in the lives of our players. And Matt, I'm going to share the story about our hike while we were in Colorado. Uh, while we were at the retreat at the Way of Champions, Matt and I went on a personal journey to discover what a labyrinth was. So we set out on a hike to find it, and honestly, we had no clue what we were looking for. And we didn't have access to the internet, so we couldn't just look it up. And every time we asked someone, which was probably at least 3 to 4 people, they all gave us the same answer. You'll know it when you see it. Now, that could have meant they didn't know either, or that it was something you simply can't explain. And in a way, I think leadership is a lot like that. We often know where we want to go, but we have to trust the path, even when it's not perfectly clear. So, as Matt and I are walking, we're winding through the woods. The scenery's changing, the path is growing narrower as we get to the top. And then finally, after what felt like hours of walking, which was probably 15 to 20 minutes, we climbed over a hill and we saw it. A beautiful, intricate labyrinth with an amazing view. And it was one of those moments that takes your breath away. And I think that's what Matt's talk is all about, trusting the path, finding the courage to lead from a place of authenticity and purpose. So, for the next 30 minutes or so, Matt will be sharing practical strategies and inspiring stories that will challenge you to think differently about what it means to lead beyond the title. I encourage you to listen with an open mind and heart and to be prepared to take away new insights and ideas that you can apply in your own life and work. And with that, I'd like to welcome Matt Booth to the conversation. Matt, without further ado, would you take a moment to introduce yourself so we can get to know you a little bit better?
Well, Jamie, I don't even know if I should talk after that amazing introduction. I love how you just connected. I was trying to find the labyrinth as far as like that's what we're doing as leaders, man. Is there's no clear cut definition of what leadership is. So I have never even thought of that connection, man. So again, like I'm blown away by just what you're talking about, and it's an absolute honor being on this call with all of you today. And just a little bit about myself. It's crazy to think this is year 25 as a coach. Been coaching for 25 years now. I'm down here in Fort Myers, Florida. I'm the director of strength and conditioning, and I'm also the dean of athletics. So, working in a private school, we kind of make up titles. We like to create titles for ourselves. So, being the dean of athletics, I have like the coolest job. I'm in charge of doing leadership development for our coaches. We do tons of culture development, mental performance. I have a chance to sit down with all our teams, and now we have a platform and a space where we can dive deeper. And we're not just looking at scoreboards, we're not just looking at tactics. We're trying to set up an environment and experience for our kids to find the best version of themselves. And really, that's been like the coolest evolution for myself as a coach. Just the past 3 or 4 years, working with Dr. Jerry Lynch and John O'Sullivan with the Way of Champions. I mean, my evolution as a coach has grown so much. But I think, Jamie, I think we talk about this a lot. I think a lot of that starts with having this self awareness of who you are as a coach right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we can lead others, we have to lead ourselves, right? And so, a big part of what we do as coaches and leaders is diving into who we are so that we can help lead the next generation, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of why I titled this talk "Leading Beyond the Title," right? And I always have this expression, and for all those listening, my favorite expression about leadership is not about us, but it starts with us, right? Before I can lead other people, I have to know how to lead myself. And Jamie, I'll tell you right now, that was the biggest trap I fell into. 25 years ago, I walked into this auditorium. It's my first year coaching. I'm coming straight out of college. I walk into this auditorium. I have all these young men and women looking at me, and I had no idea who I was as a leader. So I walked in there with this demanding presence. Like I didn't even know why people should follow me, but I just walked in there because I was a college athlete, Jamie. Those kids should follow me because I was an NCAA track and field high jumper. People should follow me because I had this title, I had this label. And man, I'll tell you what, Jamie, by the end of that first year, none of the kids liked me. I still thought I had the best blueprints, right? I'm this college guy. I trained with some Olympic athletes. I'm ready to go. But no kids connected with me. The blueprints didn't mean anything because I had zero connection. But the biggest thing, Jamie, is I didn't know who I was as a leader.
Yeah, I mean, what a great point, right? Like first we have to dive in into who we are, but we do what is comfortable for us, right? The way we were taught when we were coming along, and it takes, and I think the biggest thing for people to understand is that it takes making mistakes along the way
Yeah.
so that we can figure it out. Kind of like we did on our hike, right? Like we had no
Yeah.
clue where we were going. We took the wrong path at one point. Like we make mistakes, but we know where we want to get. And so ultimately understanding the why behind what we do.
Yeah, I think that's a great transition, man. And it before we can lead other people, like the questions I love to ask our coaches is that first question. You just said it, Jamie. Why do I coach? So for everyone listening right now, just take a second, write down why do you coach? What is that why? So I'm going to pause for about 30 seconds, but I want you to think about why do you coach? All right, so coming back, I love to hear from people from the audience. So I would love to hear, let's just go with one person. Let's hear one person's why.
I'll go ahead and share mine. This is Micah. Um, I have two. So I have one reason why I coach for others, and then one reason why I coach for myself. For others, is because I have a number of underprivileged students, and for them, this can be their way out of having to go back home because, like, literally, school and things like that are safest place for them. This gives them another couple hours to have a safe place because when they go home, it's not a safe place for them. Uh, and I would say why I coach for myself is because through different health issues that I've had, I basically have a second chance at life. And so, like, I'm not going to waste that second chance. And so, just taking what I was able to learn during my first chance that I had, and being able to relay that on to other people.
I love that. So Mike, I'm gonna kind of challenge you real quick. So how often, and here's the thing, and when I talk to coaches, and even when I talk to athletes, when we write our why down, like how often are you thinking about that why?
Um, I would say for me, it's very often because
Yeah.
even to the point of making sure that, like, I have food for them after practice every single time because a lot of, like, if they go home, they won't eat until breakfast the next day
Yeah.
if I didn't have that after practice. So for me, it's that, but also, like, I don't want to think it's just for the underprivileged kids because we have a bunch of financially privileged students that they also don't have a safe home life. And so not just being like, okay, you're lower economic class, they may have a father that's abusive, or whatever it might be. And so again, it's just being able, I coach that I can offer any of those students. But again, the word you had mentioned earlier, I think connection, like, to
Yeah.
know those things, I have to have a connection with them.
I love that. So the reason I love to ask that question, Micah and Jamie, is we often actually before we even hit record, we were talking about this, man. And I think about all the things we have to do as coaches, all the things we have to do if you have kids and you're married. Like we get so caught up with the doing part. doing this, looking at the tasks, all the things that go on in our life, right? And Jamie and I, our common mentor, Jerry Lynch, he always says, guys, we have to take a step back and realize that we're not human doings. We're human beings. And a lot of times I think that gets lost in the course of a season or in the journey of the season. Let's say we're in a 3-4 game losing streak and now we're trying to figure out how we got to fix this, how we got to fix that, and we forget about the connection part. We forget about who we're being. We forget about that bigger why and why we're showing up every single day for our kids. So again, it's just something to be mindful of as coaches. We get so caught up in the doing, we forget about the being.
Yeah, great point, Matt. And Micah brought up, he used the word connection.
Yeah.
I think it's so powerful, right? Like it is important that we know why we do what we do, right? And that can change over time. It sounds like maybe it's changed for Micah. It sounds like it's changed for Matt. I know if it's changed for me. But then also to build that connection, we need to understand the player's why and the child's why. And
Yeah.
I think, Micah, you've done a great job of that, of knowing who's in front of you and meeting them where they are and understanding their needs.
And here's the thing on connection is, we cannot connect with our kids head to head. And a lot of times we try to do that. What we have to do is connect heart to heart, right? We have to go that extra layer and really connect and build that relationship. I mean, Jamie, I know you've heard this story. This is a story about Steve Kerr and Steve Kerr, the legendary coach with the Golden State Warriors. And, Steve had never been a head coach before. Steve flew out. He got mentored by Pete Carroll, and Pete Carroll he asked Pete like, "What are the things you want to? What do you want? How do you want to be known as a coach? What do you want to show up as? What are your values?" So Pete had to work through all these questions first. But at the end of the season, like the crazy thing is, Steve goes on. They win the NBA championship, and they ask Steve. They say, "Steve, what was the most important game you won?" Everyone thought he was going to say like game 6 against the Cavs. It wasn't that. What Steve said, he said the most important game I won in my first year coaching was winning the relationship game. And again, it's for Steve recognizing like the cool thing about Steve's story was he was a bench player. So he knew what it was like being that 10th, 11th, 12th guy. So the biggest thing is how do we build better connections? And that's what it's all about. It's about connecting with the player first, the athlete, the person first, athlete second.
Yeah, and being intentional in that, right, Matt? Like really understanding, listening to the players, valuing their opinion is so important, right? We sometimes you asked the question earlier, how often you go back to your why.
Yeah.
Same thing is with your players. How often are you connecting with them? How often are you intentionally having conversations with them to get to know them?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, I mean, another question we like to ask, Jamie, is asking yourself, what's it like to be coached by me? Ask that question. What is it like to be coached by me? So again, Jamie, let's take 30 seconds. Let's give our coaches a chance, but answer that question. What is it like to be coached by me? A lot of times when I'll say, Micah, what do you coach? Every coach says, I coach soccer.
Mhm.
Well, if I gave you a soccer ball, right, and I just handed you a soccer ball, Mike, and I said, okay, go coach it. You can't do anything with it, right? So what we do is we coach people who happen to play soccer.
Right.
And so it's just again, it's getting us to think about these things. So to ask you, Micah, what is it like to be coached by you? Like what was your response to that one?
Well, I would say for me, it's basically I see them as a person first. Being a special education teacher or a teacher in special education, if I want to phrase it that way, just using person first language. And so acknowledging them as you're not a sped student, you're a student who happens to learn in a special education setting.
Yeah.
And so, and then, but also like I think about even on the special education side, like putting students in a way when they're at a soccer practice to where they can easily access the information that they have. So we're not going to put the students in special education at the end of the hallway. We're going to put them at the beginning of the hallway so that they can reach it easier and avoid some of those pitfalls. And so, but again, that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, having that connection of knowing what those pitfalls might be so that we can
Yeah.
avoid them right on top. So I think I take that from my teaching aspect of my life and use that in my coaching to just try and help them, if nothing else, be a lifelong champion and not just, hey, you do really well when you're on the field.
I love that, man. And as you're talking, the first thing I think about is the ability to meet your athlete or meet your student where they're at, not where we expect them to be. And I feel like that's a trap we fall into a lot as coaches, as leaders, as teachers. We walk into a room or we walk into an environment and we have this expectation, right? And we never get down to the level of the kid. We don't meet them where they're at, right? And I always say, well, let's meet our kids where they're at, build from there. I'm always going to keep the standards high, but I'm going to lower my expectations to make sure I'm meeting Johnny where he's at. I'm going to make sure I'm meeting Sarah where she's at. And together, because I mean, if you're looking at today's generation with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, this has to be a collaboration. Again, this whole command and demand style of leadership does not work. So we have to constantly be mindful of what is it like to be coached by me? Am I meeting every player where they're at, or am I showing up with this crazy expectation? I have these high demands, I have no support, and I create an environment where our kids are afraid to make mistakes or they don't want to be there anymore. It's all about this whole idea of seeing leadership through the lens of connection and influence.
And even just adding to that, what you talked about meeting where they are, when I was in Egypt this year, just having to coach, but using an interpreter. And I was sharing
Yeah.
this with Jamie when I got back as well, like just having to plan that much more because like I don't want to waste that connection because we're having a breakdown in communication. And so even just how going and coaching in a different country using a different language makes you a better coach coming back and speaking English as well.
I love that. And Jamie, I'm looking over at you. So, we're diving into some of this self-awareness piece and understanding who we are first before we can lead other people. But once we figure that out, Jamie, like, what do you think? What is leadership all about to you?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. And I know you've got some things planned that I'm really looking forward to you sharing. So I don't want
Yeah.
to take too much stuff from you. But I listening to y'all talk, right? I keep coming back to this idea of coaching the process, not the outcome. Because
Yeah.
that's what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah.
It's like sometimes we get so focused on the outcome and that we have to win or we're being driven by winning when reality, if we start focusing on the process and we start setting goals within the process, then the outcome takes care of itself. And so
Yeah.
just listening to Micah sharing his story and then you as well, Matt, and then John O'Sullivan, I believe, says you coach a child, not a sport,
Yeah.
right? And so building that connection, understanding your why, and then really focusing on the process, it's going to change things not only for yourself as a leader, and put things in perspective, but it's also going to change the environment you're creating for your team.
Yeah, I love that. And this has been, again, this has been like my biggest struggle when I was a young coach and trying to really figure out what leadership is, right? And again, a lot of times as coaches, we coach the way we were coached. That's what I did. That was the trap I fell into. I was that command and demand. I was that college athlete. You're supposed to listen to me, all these things. And I've had so many different iterations of what leadership means to me. And then I really started thinking about putting it in a lens that's simple to remember, especially for me as a coach, for other leaders, and for our kids. So, Jamie, what I came up with was this idea of just the four eyes of leadership. So, I've broken it down into these four eyes. The first one, the first eye is influence. And Jamie, I know when we talk about influence in the Way of Champions, we have this great expression. And if you ever listen to the Way of Champions podcast, every single podcast ends with this phrase: our influence is never neutral. So, as coaches, it's about the way we show up every single day. We are either going to have a positive influence or we're going to have a negative influence. Again, I always challenge our coaches, I challenge our leaders, I challenge our captains. I say, we are the ones that create the environment. How are we showing up? What is our influence? Are we driving towards the standards? Are we going away from the standards? So we have to understand our influence is never neutral. My second I always talk about impact. And for me, impact is about going beyond the scoreboard, going beyond the results. We have such an amazing platform using sports to use sports to teach life lessons, right? We always challenge our kids, and this comes from the book Legacy. We want to have an impact. We want to leave our jersey in a better place. So every year we challenge our kids. We say, hey, when you put this jersey on, what story are you going to add every single day to this jersey? The challenge is when I turn that jersey in, it's like, man, good luck for the next person that has to wear this jersey because I'm leaving it in a better place. Coaches, for us, like our impact, like don't ask me what impact I've had this year. I mean, ask me in 20 years. How are my kids showing up as husband, as wives, as members of society? Like that's what impact is for me. It's going beyond just sports. It's having that legacy, doing things bigger than ourselves. It's planting those seeds for some trees we'll never see, but we're setting the environment for our kids to do something bigger than us. My third eye is inspiration. So inspiration, the reason I chose inspiration, I'm big on finding like the origins of words. And for inspiration, the original word inspiration means to breathe into. And for me, that was such a cool thing. Like I get to breathe into all of my kids this motivation, teaching them how to have courage, teaching them how to live through values, teaching them to hold themselves to a standard, teaching them to be better than the next person or the next generation. Like these are all things I get to breathe into our kids every single day. And that gives them the motivation to show up every day. Like I'm looking at that internal motivation to inspire them, to breathe into them, to give them the life to go do things and to find the better version of themselves every single day. And then to wrap this all up, I mean, you look at influence, impact, and inspiration. The last I for me is we have to be intentional. We have to do this every single day. We have to be consistent. I can't show up one version of Coach Booth and then the next day I'm on a different version. I have to be super intentional the way I show up. And so with that, Jamie, that's kind of how I've had this iteration of what leadership means to me.
No, Matt, well said. And sometimes as coaches, we forget how smart children are, right?
Yeah,
They're always watching us. When we mentioned earlier, we're role models, we're mentors, but they're always observing us and paying attention to what we say or what we don't say or how we're acting, right? And so this idea of being intentional, being inspirational, like having an impact, understanding your influence, so important that we're doing this consistently, right? And that
yeah.
we're providing an environment that the players know what to expect when they show up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's like the big thing is once we figure all that out, it's one of those things when we come to our teams, I think it's establishing this language. And that's the big thing for me is leadership is establishing this common language, right? So when we work with every single team on our campus here at Canterbury, or if I go out to work with other schools, what we do is we work really hard on establishing the language of the leader. And with that, what we talk about is creating a vision, creating our values and creating our standards. All right. So again, if we're looking at language of leaders, we're talking about vision, values, and standards. I see some people writing some things down. So I'm going to give some people a second to write it down. So again, language of leader is we're talking about vision, values, and standards. So let's kind of break this down, Jamie, real quick. And so when I'm working with teams, when I'm talking about vision, I kind of break this down. I call it a WWH framework. So WWH framework, when you're talking about vision, the first W means what do you believe is possible for your team? So again, that first W, what do you believe is possible for your team this year? What is actually possible for that team? The second W, we want to talk about why do you believe it? Why do we believe in this vision? Why do we believe in this possibility? And then finally, we have to back it up with the H. How do we actually achieve it? So again, in this forming stage of a team dynamic, we have to establish, I call it that North Star. What are we going after every single day? What is that big vision? What is that vision that looks beyond the scoreboard? What do we believe is possible? Why do we believe it? And how do we achieve it? So, Jamie, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that part.
Yeah, no, we talked earlier about the process, right? And I think
Yeah.
I love what you have here. And then that last part, the how do you achieve it? That is the process, right? But the importance in the detail whenever you're creating that how. Sometimes as coaches, especially soccer coaches, since that's who we're talking to today, is like you create your training session and you're detailed and you have, you know, exactly what you want to coach, how you want to coach it. But now are you looking at things through the long-term lens, right? Like how are you going to achieve this goal you've set for your team? And so the detail to me is just so important.
Yeah, it's huge. And this reminds me of it, and I was gonna talk about this in a little bit, but you just kind of cued me off a little bit here, Jamie. So I always use this equation. It's called mindset plus environment equals behaviors. Right. So it's one thing for us as coaches, us as leaders, like let's say we're trying to establish all this language. We're talking about that vision. We have all this stuff kind of rolled out, but are we creating the mindset in our athletes to actually go after this vision? Right. Are we establishing a growth mindset? Right. And it's one thing to just talk about a growth mindset. I could talk about a growth mindset and say, hey, Micah, I need you to go have a growth mindset, go do it. But it's another thing to have an environment that is conducive to building a growth mindset, right? So if I'm talking about mindset and environment, if I want my kids to have a growth mindset, I have to be super intentional about giving them strategies to build it. So one thing we do, Jamie, and I know I shared this up in Denver, is we kind of installed a bunch of whiteboards in our locker rooms. We have them in the weight room. We have them in our gym. So what we do is we check in every single day. We ask our kids, like, what do you want to work on today? Why do you want to build? Why do you want to work on that skill? And then how are you going to do it? So it falls in line with our WWH framework. So every single day, we're creating an environment that's building the mindset we want. If we have those two things working together, well, guess what? Now we're going to have the behaviors that we want in our culture, right? So it's one thing to talk about all this stuff. It's a one thing to roll out all this language, but are we actually creating the environment where the behaviors show up?
I mean, I'm hearing consistency, Matt. Like that's what I hear is like you're creating an environment where you're consistently coming back to who you are
Yeah.
as a leader, right? And I mean, how important is that? Again, going back to the players or the child knows what to expect when they show up, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, what you've done with the whiteboards, they're part of the process now. Who doesn't
Yeah.
want to be involved in that? Where you're a part of your own development? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, exactly. And like the best part about that is, we build in again that word intentional. We build an intentional space for after practice. They go back and they reflect because we all know the expression like we don't learn through experience, we learn by reflecting on the experience. So we have to build in that space for our teams, for our coaches, for our athletes to go back and reflect. Did I meet the standard today? Did I go after that one goal, that skill I was trying to work on? Did I actually do it? If the answer is yes, then cool. And the next day we're forming some new goals. If it's no, then how can I go back and work on it again the next day? So again, it's one thing to have the language, right, Jamie? But the other big piece of it is the how. How are we building it in our environment every single day? What are the values we actually want to live by? So if I say that word values, Jamie, I'll challenge you real quick. What is a value to you? What does values mean to you?
What do values mean to me? Those are things that I'm going to live by every day, right? Like it's what I truly believe in, and it is how I'm going to show up. And I'm going to be consistent when I show up every day based on these values.
I love that. So Jamie, is there a finish line if you're living through your values?
I don't think so. I think that you just consistently are showing up and being who you are and authentic, right? I said it earlier, like being authentic.
Yeah, I love that. So going back to your whole word about process, like the coolest thing about a values is there is no finish line. It's actually who we're aspiring to be every single day, right? And that's the coolest thing about a value is like every single day I can wake up and be courageous, or every single day I can wake up and go after hard work, or every single day I can wake up and lead with love. These are things I can aspire to do every single day, right? So imagine if we're building that into our environment. This is such a big piece for us as coaches is living through our values. It's such a critical thing because if we're living through our values, we're challenging our kids to be a better version of themselves every single day. I want my kids to be courageous. I want my kids to have compassion. I want our kids to lead with empathy. All these things show up in our narrative, and we want them to aspire to this every day. There's no finish line. And that's why I love being process based, right? I can show up every single day and live through my values. It's not about winning a championship. Let's say I win a championship on Saturday. I can still wake up Sunday morning and live through my values. But if I'm just chasing after a trophy, Jamie, the second I win the trophy, my dreams, my goals are done because I don't have to wake up Sunday morning and work hard because I already won the trophy.
Yeah, Matt, well said. And this is somewhere where I think you excel, right? Is being able to take the values and these ideas and actually implement. And you've already discussed the whiteboard a little bit, but one of the
Yep.
things that stood out to me in your presentation when we were together previously is like your ability to implement the values within a team so that everybody knows exactly what's expected, what
Yeah.
the standard is for the team, for the individuals. So do you mind just sharing a little bit about what y'all do?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, man, when we're working with our teams is, again, going back to this whole idea about collaboration. So when I work with teams, it's giving our kids ownership and giving our kids the voice, right? So when we sit down and we do our vision, or we talk about, or we pick our 3 to 5 values, or if we're talking about standards, our kids are part of this process, right? It's giving them the ownership of who do they want to be defined as this season? What values do they want to live through? So what we do that first day, man, Jamie, we're sitting there and I'm firing stuff up on the whiteboard. So if they use the value of courage, I'm going to have those kids define what courage means to them. So basically what I'm trying to do is build this blueprint because now I'm building in ways to hold our teammates and hold our players and hold our coaches accountable because I'm creating this language that everything we talk about goes back to the values. Everything we talk about goes back to our standards. So we're trying to create dialogue for our kids because that's the hard part, Jamie, is peer-to-peer accountability. So what we're trying to do on our campus is teaching our kids to use this language. Hey, we said our standard was to always attack every opportunity with purpose. That's our standard. So when I'm using language, if I'm peer to peer, all I'm telling them is I'm calling you up. Hey, you're not meeting the standard today. This is not a personal attack. So what we're trying to do within our framework is empowering our kids to take ownership of this. But again, it just takes that time, that takes that intentional space to spell everything out. So it's not just putting your values on the wall and say, all right, that's it. It's how do we bring them to life? How do we define them? You know, before practice, Jamie, I know I talked about this. We huddle up before every practice and we come up with like our own mantra statement. So every single team has a mantra. So what I'll do real quick is I'm just going to read the one that we created for our soccer team. So every day before practice starts, we huddle up in a circle, and a circle means a lot to us because the biggest thing about a circle, Jamie, is there anyone in the front or back when you're in a circle? Yes or no?
No.
No, everyone is standing side by side, right? So this is the image we're trying to create for our teams and for our coaches and for our players and for our parents is this is about us coming together, standing side by side and doing something bigger than ourselves. We're chasing after our vision, we're chasing after our values, we're aspiring to live our standards. So what we do is we write our mantra statement. So for our soccer team, here's our commitment statement we say at the beginning and the end of every practice. We say, I commit to a mindset of greatness and a culture of refusing to lose by finding a just response when things are not going our way and remaining true to our values and our commitment to one another. We commit to a philosophy of being guaranteed nothing, but ready for everything. By remaining true to my teammates, for I am because we are Canterbury. And literally our kids have memorized this statement. So again, it's about coming together intentionally and reminding ourselves this is bigger than just going out and getting our stats. This is bigger than just going to win a trophy. This is about establishing a culture where everyone feels like they're seen, they're heard, they're valued, they're belong. Like, can you imagine that environment where everyone feels like they're relevant, important, valued, empowered, respected? Those players are going to run through the wall for you because you're intentionally creating an environment that looks beyond just stats, looks beyond them just being a player. You're connecting at a deeper level. You're giving them purpose. You're giving them drive. You're breathing into them every single day. And those kids are going to run through the wall for you.
Yeah, and Matt, I mean, it's amazing what y'all are doing in the detail, again, back to the detail of what you're doing to create this positive environment. And so for those of you that are listening and you don't know where to start, right? Like there's been a ton of really good information, but you're like, how do I implement this? And I'm gonna take this quote, how do you take it from the wall to the ball? Right? And so start here.
Yeah.
Can you start every training session where you huddle up in a circle and you have some sort of mantra for your team and just see what happens, because now you're setting the start to your training session. They know once we huddle up and then we say our mantra, now we're going to go train, right? And it's time to leave everything else to the side. And so for me, the challenge would be to all of you, just start there and see what happens. And then you can start slowly implementing other things, right? Like you can't do everything at one time. So do it in little steps, and I think that would be a great place to start.
Yeah, it's huge. It's about that whole concept. Like we love to talk about Kaizen, and Kaizen is just those small little things coming from the Japanese philosophy, or 1% better. Like when we do these small things, when we stack these days, like when they start to memorize this mantra, the power behind it. I mean, Jamie, real quick, like we had one kid, he broke his leg. He comes out of surgery. He's like high on all his like painkillers, and he recites the commitment statement in the hospital room in the hospital room and sends it to the team right before the game. The team got so fired up, they went out there and just dominated the game. So again, we're creating this environment, and I think Jamie, that's the biggest point for our coaches is to understand we are the ones that create the environment every single day. So if we can be intentional, right? If we understand what our influence is, if we're leaning on having a bigger impact beyond sports, imagine what we're creating for those kids, right? And Jamie, before we hit record, I told you about what John Kessel taught me. So John Kessel, legendary sports performance coach with Team USA Volleyball, he always tells me, Matt, never be a kid's last coach. Think about that. We never want to be a kid's last coach. What I'm trying to do as a coach, I'm not trying to create college professional athletes. I'm trying to create great young men, great young women that want to be athletes for life, right? You don't have to play on the pro level. I just want you to love what you do and you carry that throughout your life because those are the life lessons I want to be known for as a coach.
Love it, Matt. Before we let you go, man, thank you for bringing your insight and your energy, man. It's like there was a couple times you're talking, I got goosebumps. Like I was ready to go play.
I almost ran out of my office. I had to lock in here, guys.
So we appreciate it. And before we do let you go, hopefully we can lock you in to coming back and continuing this conversation because there's so much we didn't get through. And I wanna go a little bit deeper into these ideas and give the coaches like the steps that they can take to implement these things.
100%. I'm all in. Or if anyone has any questions or want to follow up, Jamie, you can share my information. And I just want to leave one last thought, Jamie. And this is something that came from our summer. And so Jamie and I, like Jamie said in the intro, we had the honor and the privilege to get to know each other with the Way of Champions licensing program. And by the end of that weekend, we came up with our own mantra. And you remember what it is? We
No,
talked about we want to play bigger. And I think that's my last message to all of us coaches listening to this is play bigger. Play bigger for yourself. Play bigger for your kids. Play bigger for your husband, your wife. Play bigger for your kids. Like, stop worrying about all the things we have to do, and sit down and take a moment and ask yourself, who do I want to be? How am I going to play bigger for all these people in my life? And if we do that, can you imagine the energy? Again, I'm trying to keep myself in my chair. I get very fired up, very passionate, because it's one of those things, man. I ask myself every day, how am I going to play bigger? What environment am I going to create? What's the experience going to be like? And I'm telling you, you are going to run through the wall. So everyone who's listening, just play bigger. I love you guys. If anyone needs anything, hit me up. Let me know. I'm here for you.
Matt, thank you. Thank you to all of you that joined us and are listening to this on YouTube. We greatly appreciate you taking the time. And if, like Matt said, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out.